My name is Stacy Price, and I'm here to talk to you about how humans produce effective movements. So, moving all starts with a will to move. You need to have a goal-directed idea to do a task of some sort every day whenever you do any sort of movement whatsoever. When it comes to sitting up out of bed or finishing your last pull-up at the gym, it all starts with an intent, which is in your central nervous system. The central nervous system is the brain and the spinal cord, which are the main command centers for the rest of your body. So any intent or will to move will start in your brain, and it works its way down. So this is planning, and this is a huge part of movement in general. You plan and you initiate movements. So planning all starts in the brain, works its way down the spinal cord, and from there, when you start to initiate movement, you're going to retrieve previous experiences, senses, emotions to execute the movement, eventually execute the movement properly. So from there, we're going to move on to executing and monitoring, which is just briefly, but that's part of the peripheral nervous system. So we were just talking about the central nervous system. The peripheral nervous system is everything but the brain and spinal cord. So this is where your sensory receptors are, all your muscular actions, anything else that you can think of. And so the way that we eventually do execute movement is through our motor neurons. So we have upper motor neurons and we have lower motor neurons, which are located in the spinal cord, the lower spinal cord. So your upper motor neurons are going to travel down to the lower, and your lower motor neurons are what are going to travel to your motor units and tell your muscles to contract. So all this also starts with using your five senses to determine any stimulus in your environment that would cause you to move. So for example, if you're cooking and your hand touches like the hot stove, you're gonna instantly reflex back. This is a reflex, but this is different from your feedback control, your feed forward control, which is when you think of something at first and then execute the movement from there on. When you react to something as a reflex, that is a feedback control, which is a closed loop, and it reacts quickly and sometimes can override your feed forward control. So like even if you're thinking like I wanna pick this up out of the oven, your senses are gonna react to that and tell you no, that's too hot, you can't touch that, you're gonna hurt yourself. So this is a really good thing that our body has to keep us in check, to make sure that we don't get injured. Like even when you're weightlifting, you'll react and not injure yourself by dropping the weight before it's gonna like break anything or tear any sort of muscles. So our senses are really important when it comes to executing movements. So the next level to movement that separates the elite and the non-elite is coordinated movements. Coordinated movements come from the cerebellum, and this is where balance also occurs. And this also has to do with our vision. So vision is separated from ambient and focal. So ambient vision is our subconscious vision. So we're not thinking about what's going on around us, but we're aware of it. Like, so for example, I'm looking at you, my focal vision is my conscious vision, and this is where you can anticipate actions, and athletes are better with their focal vision because, especially with soccer players, like they will focus their focal vision onto the opposite player's hip movements rather than just the ball, because they can't anticipate the action that the player is going to carry out. So my ambient vision is currently located at Luke Skywalker. I don't necessarily have to look at him to know that he's there, but I'm aware of it. So vision plays a really important role in, like I said, separating athletes from the elite to non-elite, as well as our dynamic systems. So all the systems in our body, including anything that just works together, the musculoskeletal system, thoracic, cardiovascular system, they all will interact with each other at some point, and they're dynamic. So they are constantly changing and adapting to whatever needs to be adjusted. But they're self-organizing, so they need to be stable. They like to be stable and have a pattern. So we always try to like come back to what, if we are slightly adjusted to whatever stimulus or environment is happening, we like to come back to like the base of our system. So a part of the dynamic systems theory is that we are an individual, and as individuals, like our task and environment are also effective for our movements in general. So, and the individual, the task, and the environment all have constraints. And a constraint is a barrier or an obstacle that you need to overcome or adapt to in order to execute the movement. So an environmental constraint would be that it's raining. So if I'm on the water and I'm rowing, an environmental constraint would be that the rain is coming down and my oar handle is slippery. So I would need to take note of that it's slippery, and that I need to be more careful with my grip. And that would be task. Task is more so like something like grip and holding and like catching or throwing. That's task oriented. So a task constraint would also have to deal with like taking grip of the oar and like holding on to it. But that ties into with environmental, because of the rain, it's going to be slippery, and then I have to, those are constraints. So an individual constraint is more internal. So individually, an internal constraint that I would have is thinking, it could be physiological. So physiologically, if I had just lifted the day before and we're doing hard pieces on the water, my legs are going to be sore. So it's like my muscle fibers have been shredded from lifting hard the day before, and that's going to cause me to be sore, and that's an that's an internal constraint that I have that I would need to somehow work around at practice the next day in order to fulfill and compete the pieces. So from the dynamics theory, there's also the way that we perceive the constraints and how we react to them, which is perception-action coupling. And this is extremely important in determining good athletes and just executing coordinated motor skills. So the way that you perceive things, that these constraints that occur, and the way that you act on it is what's going to make you a good athlete or not. So that's the key. That's the key to perceptual, to purposeful, effective motor skills. How much time?
8 minutes.
8 minutes? All right, well, I'm done. That's all I have to say about producing effective movements in human beings. This is my co-mate, co-worker, Luke Skywalker, and
over and out.